Diogo, it's great to have you on the podcast, especially because I remember back when we were just getting started in the liberty movement in DC together nearly 2 decades ago. And I'm just so proud of you now being the president over at the Foundation for Economic Education and everything you're doing there. Thanks
Thank you
for joining
so
the Liberty Ventures podcast.
thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you for having me here, and yeah, thank you for the partnership that goes back now, a couple decades.
And what's amazing about this to me is that Fee is obviously much older than the two of us. It's really one of the first pro liberty organizations that was ever established in the U.S. And we know the history really well. But for anyone who is a part of the Liberty Ventures Network and is just getting familiar with it, let's recap how important Fee has been to the cause of liberty in America over its history.
Yeah, Fee is this America's original free market think tank, right? It was built in 1946, 80 years ago. It was that post-war moment, which was a foundational moment for the liberty tradition in America. We had to rediscover what liberty was. We were, coming out of this war economy, and then Leonard Reed really wanted to make sure that there was a living group, a living movement that understood free market economics, something that seemed to be in danger of going extinct in the US. So he put together a great group. Among our founding staff, you have people like Henry Hazlitt and Ludwig von Mises, who Reed helped bring to America. So it was this powerhouse that, with time, included other advisors and writers and thinkers. Milton Friedman wrote 7 years ago his paper on rent control for fee, and think that 7 years later, that is still a topic of conversation, something that needs to be rewritten and resaid and restated. Um, FEE was also the organization that pretty much made the word libertarian like a living political tradition. Leonard Reed was, like many others, he didn't feel comfortable of simply describing himself as a liberal anymore, because the word liberal had become associated with progressive pragmatism. Um, and he also wouldn't consider himself a conservative for the same reason that Hayek wouldn't call himself a conservative either. So he was looking for a different world, and Dean Russell was wrote for Fee in the 1950s that libertarian could be that word. Libertarian had a meaning in psychology of believing in free will. And there is also this political tradition, more like anarchist, and to think that this was in the 50s. So to think that 7 years later, I was looking at the Time magazine, the AI special edition with the Person of the Year, and the Person of the Year is actually a group of people, the AI founders. And if you had to describe what's the average political philosophy of that group, I think you have to use the word libertarian. You have Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. Those are people who have called themselves libertarians at some point. Jeff Bezos, another one. So that grammar that many of our, business elite these days identify with, that was created within, the halls of Fee. So Fee has this long tradition within the liberal movement, the libertarian movement, or the classical liberal movement, the freedom philosophy, as Reed would like to call it. By the 70s, Leonard Reed was himself disenchanted with the word libertarian, so he started calling himself just a defender of freedom. He started using the term freedom philosophy. And Fee to this day, is part of the same tradition. We follow the same principles. iPencil, the most famous Fee essay ever published, is still part of what we mean, right? iPencil is a work about spontaneous orders, globalization, freedom to trade, And those are the principles that Fee still believes to this day.
And Fee has been incredibly impactful, not just in housing these incredible intellectuals, but influencing people throughout its history as well. There's a famous picture of Ronald Reagan when he was president on Air Force One reading Fee's magazine, The Freeman, showing the power of developing these ideas, being able to influence policy and business and the people who have been involved here. And
Yeah.
but you reference the fact that when Milton Friedman was writing about rent control 70 years ago, we're still dealing with that today. It does seem, and I know you agree, that we are facing a lot of the same intellectual challenges today that Fee was when it got started over 70 years ago. And so I'm curious how you think about what's the same from when Fee got started in terms of the challenging economic and intellectual landscape, and what's different now.
Yeah. This past week, I read two, right of center columnists, and they had opposing views on like the ideological moment we're in. One, it was Ross Douthat for the New York Times, and he was saying that the conservative movement is dead. We have a new kind of nationalism now, and that kind of free market Reaganite moment of America is over, and we have to deal with this new right wing nationalism now. So his reading is okay. We are in a new moment for us to think about ideas in this country. The other one was Neil Ferguson writing for the Free Press, and he was saying the opposite. He was saying that we are living among these old 19th century traditions, socialism with Mamdani or nationalism with the right in America. And he was saying those are just old ideas, and we have to go back and relearn how classical liberals, libertarians dealt with those ideas. I think they're both right. I think that some of the ideas we're seeing, they have an old pedigree, and there are some fallacies like the balance of trade fallacy that Adam Smith was writing against. That's not even 19th century, that's 18th century, and it's still with us. It's still in the intuition behind a lot of policy making in America. Um, but there's also some things that feel new, right? We have to restate our case. We cannot just rely, okay, read Adam Smith and you think that that things will people just change the way they think. So we have to restate our like the principles should remain the same because some of the traditions are the same, but we have to think them anew. So if we want to talk about affordability, which is I think a big topic for many Americans, we have to relearn how to think about it and how to explain the way that a free market in a free society can actually drive prices down instead of up. But then we have to talk about productivity. We have to talk about the messy of emergent orders. It's much easier to talk about you have this a big name, a big hero. They pull a lever and then things happen, and like the villain is defeated. Those narratives are much easier, always have been. So we are always in this process of dealing with economic education, right? That's in our name, and that's something that it's our tradition, but we have to find new ways of talking about the same ideas, rediscovering these ideas for the next generation. And if I might add, like that was my experience as well. I came to Fee as a student 22 years ago. I went to a Fee seminar. I was at university in Brazil. I was going to become a lawyer. I found these ideas in my university library, and the books I was reading. It was in Portuguese, right? I was living in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The books I was reading, they had this little seal called the Liberal Institute, Instituto Liberal, and I wanted more of them. So I couldn't find them in the bookstores. I couldn't find more of them in the library. So I just drove to that address of the Instituto Liberal, knocked on their door. It's like, hi, I'm Diogo. Can you give me more of these books? And they told me not only they could give me more books, but they also had an essay competition and about Ludwig von Mises. And the prize was an all expense paid trip to a seminar in New York. That's where fee was based, and that's when I discovered fee. That's when I discovered the liberty movement, and that changed my life. Right, I was going to become a lawyer. I decided I want to actually dedicate my life to this. So that that's also the way that fee has touched me, and I believe has touched many people, as you mentioned. Charles Koch, Ron Paul, Tyler Cowen, many people came through this fee pipeline.
They did. And I remember going to fee seminars back in the day as well and working with so many of the fee faculty. It was a transformative experience for so many of us when we're young. And fee's always, in my mind, been at the cutting edge of thinking of ways to communicate these ideas, teach these ideas. Back when it was getting started, it was just developing a think tank in the first place being a radical idea. Then creating the magazine, engaging business leaders, especially when it got started, to be a part of that education and educating them, which is a precursor for what we're doing with Liberty Ventures in a lot of ways. So, what's new at Fee? You just became president, what, a year and a half ago at this point? 2 years
Yeah, a year
ago?
and a half ago, yes.
Yep. So what's new? What are you most excited about for what's coming up with Fee?
Well, a lot of things are new in terms of ideas. Um, so let me begin with what's not new and what is actually something that we believe that should be that core tradition. One is the way that we teach economics is not new. Fee has this Austrian DNA. Fee teach economics in a way that we call thick economics, not just as a set of mathematical questions, but as economics as this living experience. It is talking about entrepreneurial discovery, emergent orders, human action. So this is the way that Fee still teaches economics. And in the past 10 years, Fee was very online. We have by now over 1 million subscribers and followers in all the different channels in social media. But Fee had also discontinued some of the classic programs. So the seminars, the Freeman magazine that you just mentioned. And there was a reason to do that because the scale that you get online is so much bigger. But we feel that we also need to deepen that pipeline, the same pipeline that I went through, that you went through when you went through a Fee seminar. So we are bringing back the seminars. We had 2 seminars and 1 hackathon last year. Liberty Ventures was actually a partner of our hackathon in California last year. This year, we're going to be doing more seminars and more hackathons even. We are going to have a summer campus, as we're calling, during the summer. It's going to be at University of Maryland, and that's going to be a series of seminars happening together with some keynote moments where everyone comes together, but also their own cohorts doing their own thing during that 4-day period. So we're bringing back those experiences, right? We want to build communities. We want to make sure that people can move from just their cell phones into looking at each other's eyes and actually creating that community. When we were working together at Cato Alexander, that's what was happening there as well, right? We were outside of, I think, Ian Vasquez's office, working at our cubicles. But those bonds, we want to make sure that those communities are created these days as well. And we're bringing some new competitions as well. So we're going through something that some people are calling a literacy crisis, an education crisis. In many tests, American students are performing worse for the past 10 years now. Some universities are having to create programs to teach like high school math or to make sure the students are able to read a book from start to finish. So I think education is changing as well, and we have to find ways to engage with students that are new and that make sure that they can have that kind of deep experience, but in new ways. So from Europe, we're importing this competition called Economics Olympiad. It's an European organization. They're our partners. And we're bringing that to the Americas, to the US, to Latin America, to have like a intercontinental final. But that's a way for students to engage with economic thinking in a way that's competitive, it's fun, and recognizes their excellence. We're very excited with that. Uh, from the Economics Olympiad, we want to build economics clubs throughout America, in American high schools. There are many organizations outside of the liberty space that do this really well with like chapters in different high schools. We want to do the same with economics, and have more competitions, essay competitions, video competitions. We want for students to get engaged with fee, produce content for us, and at the same time, educate one another in thick economics.
So I'll throw a bias out there for all the listeners. I'm actually on the board of the US arm of the International Economics Olympiad. And so really excited that you guys are partnering with them to bring this to fruition finally in the US. And I think this is absolutely needed. Honestly, just throwing this out there, Diogo, I know you know this, but because we did partner on the hackathon before, but one of the purposes of the Liberty Ventures Network is to get more business leaders involved in teaching the principles of capitalism to the next generation, both economics and business and how they actually work hand in hand with each other.
The hackathon is exactly that, right? It is a moment also for students to become more entrepreneurial in a kind of a semi-seminar setting, right? So we have lectures, we have that educational moment, but we also allow them to build, right? We will allow them to like, well, can we develop a product using maybe AI tools to teach economics? Can we develop new firms even, right? So I think this is a great mix of the educational component and the entrepreneurial component that you guys bring.
100%. And one of the things that I've said to you before, I'm going to say here to invite anyone listening to be a part of, but we want to provide business leaders who are able to support the next generation and teaching them both about economics and being entrepreneurial, developing their businesses. And that's one way I would encourage anyone listening, if you're excited about fees work, to get involved with it. But I mean, Diogo, what do you think more business leaders could be doing to engage economic education, not just for the next generation, but the public at large and what you're trying to get out there through fee?
Yeah, so going back to this idea of competitions, like a hackathon is something that many business leaders might not know how it actually works, but you bring a group of students, like 40 students, like we did last summer, um, and you give them tools, you give them some basic skills, and you give them a challenge, right? They build teams and they have to use their newly acquired skills and the tools available to them to answer a challenge. This challenge can be maybe more policy oriented, like develop a new public policy. It can be a communications campaign. It can be like social media. Can you create a video? Or it can be more about building things, right? Using, as we did, AI tools to build software, software for economic teaching. Um, so I think one of the ways that more business leaders can be involved is exactly to support these kinds of new formats. We desperately need new ways to engage with young people. A lot of young people are alienated. They are just disengaged. They cannot pay attention for more than 2 seconds to any kind of concept. So to find ways to actually make them pay attention, make them connect with others in a group setting, so they're not just talking to ChatGPT, they're talking to one another. Uh, Create those moments in those spaces right now is more important than ever.
And that's why I love that you're doing things in person again to capture people's attention, to build the communities around them, like you said, all built around this good, solid free market education. But I mean, you've also done a lot of research yourself, Diogo. So I'm curious, are you still writing? Are you developing anything yourself right now as in contributing to Fee's intellectual work?
Yeah, so I have a weekly newsletter. It's called the Fee Weekly. If you go to fee.org, you see a pop up to subscribe to our newsletters, and I'm always trying to keep my thinking fresh and being insightful about how we are seeing the challenges of our day and the challenges to liberty, the challenge to markets. A lot of what we need, I think, is not only original thinking, but original ways of supporting, the old way of thinking about economics, what used to be called political economy, in the times of Bastiat. And I come from the third world. I come from Brazil. um, I lived through protectionism, through import substitution, as you called it. um, I lived through high inflation, and to see many of these ideas coming back in America, not as a history lesson, but as a policy proposal, that kind of scares me. So when I remember when I came to the US for the first time, this was 1991, and I was traveling with my parents. It was their first time in the US as well. And because things were so expensive in Brazil, we were thinking, what can we buy in America to bring back to Brazil? And I wanted the bike, right? I wanted a bike. Okay, so we were in Miami, and we went to one of those stores that sells bikes and toys and etc. Because I want something that was more affordable than what we could afford in Brazil. Uh, but one thing that Brazil had not only was high tariffs, but you also had this policy that understood that for Brazil to be technologically advanced, we couldn't import technologies from abroad. So computers, video games, that was semi-banned from Brazil. People had to find loopholes to create like a Brazilian version of a Nintendo Entertainment System. And one thing that we couldn't have in Brazil was handheld devices at all. So when I walked inside the store and I saw a Game Boy for the first time, I was like, for me that was magic. I had never heard of that, I have never seen that. And my dad was like, well, we only have money for either the bike or the Game Boy. I was like, the bike is more expensive in Brazil, but still it's there. But this is forbidden. For me, it was like, the taste of something that is illegal in your country and you can finally put your hands into that. Um, and those are like lessons that stay with you, right? I came to America. Why was America so different? I mentioned inflation. When I was a child, my mom would give me $1,000 bill. Our currency was the Cruzeiro, $1,000, so I could go to the store and buy a bag of chips. And and when I got to the store, I would have to raise the price tagger. There was always this guy who was changing the prices almost every day. And if I saw him, I knew I had to run past him. Otherwise, he would change the prices and I wouldn't be able to afford my bag of chips. Um, and when I came back home with that bag of chips, we had converted one of the rooms into a pantry, because my parents, whenever they got their paycheck, they would do the same. They would run to the store, buy as much as they could, because next day their salary would be worth nothing. So I saw that firsthand, what inflation, what tariffs, what protectionism can cause to a nation. And Brazil is a textbook example of what not to do. So when you are in my position now in America and you see some of these ideas crawling back as if they were new, that triggers all kinds of warnings and ways that we have to push back and to teach what makes the American economy so great, the most powerful in the world. And it's not tariffs and inflation and all kinds of economic manipulation. It is the power of free markets.
Diogo, that is a powerful story that I think is a great way for us to end this. In addition to me saying just thank you for everything you're doing with FEE and the opportunity for the Liberty Ventures Network to support. Really, thank you for everything that you personally and that the Foundation for Economic Education is doing.
I really appreciate this opportunity, Alexander, and let's keep our partnership strong.
Let's keep it strong. Thanks so much.